Cimic House took a proper pounding as Mahdi Army forces swarmed around the isolated compound. All hands were called to the barricades to help halt the tide. As the siege of Cimic House intensified, supplies began to run low. Before the siege, trucks had delivered supplies to Cimic House. Now the only vehicles that could get in and out were the Warriors.
The Warriors obviously is not a resupply vehicle, it's an armoured fighting vehicle. However, to send an 8-ton truck full of stores into Alamara at that time would have been suicidal.
You'd be running from the Warriors to the kitchen with a handful of baked beans and sausages and bacon and ice cream, and you'd be getting shot at, and you'd sort of have to stop and chuckle to yourself.
Between the 14th and the 25th of August, even the Warriors couldn't get through. Cimic House was being slowly strangled to death. Conditions inside the camp got bad. Rubble was strewn everywhere. Roofs were missing. Soldiers were haggard and unshaven. Sniper Adam Summers shows us just how bad conditions got.
Okay, you see on the wall here, where mortar rounds are coming, all the frag has come from it. Okay, and that's the sort of the marks that it will leave. There was bullet holes all over the walls. There was bits of fragmentation from the mortar rounds and RPGs. If you look onto the roof, you'll see like bits where the walls come out from bullet holes.
The thing about any form of battle is noise. Noise and smell, that constant smell of cordite, and then the constant fire from small arms. And then there's the shouting, there's the constant radio traffic. Add to that the backdrop of the Muezzin's call, add to that the backdrop of a busy and bustling city, and it was a very surreal experience.
Cimic House was hammered by RPGs, rockets and small arms fire. Life inside the ruined compound was hell, but one weapon in particular struck fear into the defenders.
For the enemy, the most effective way to strike against us was using mortar fire.
When you hear that mortar round being fired, there's nothing worse than wondering where it's going to land. It's probably the worst feeling ever.
Cimic House was malleted by mortars all that August. After 2 weeks of constant siege, some of the younger lads began to wilt.
You could see the fractures appearing in the soldiers on a daily basis. So constant reassurance and that family spirit was required at every juncture just to keep the soldiers powering through and motivated.
And when you're busy, you know, your morale's quite high. When you have time to contemplate things that are going on, think about your wives, your families, you know, girlfriends, what's going on back in the UK, I mean, your morale can get, you know, quite low.
The British Army has a solution to low morale: banter.
It turns the situation from a grim one. You know, you can be wet, cold, hungry, you can be shot at, you can be scared, but sooner or later somebody cracks a joke. But what it does, it lightens the whole situation. It lifts the morale of the troops, without a doubt.
One thing that brought out the black humour in the guys was the bins that we had in the camp with the big lids. People used to forget to just place the lid down and just let it fall. And when it hit the top of the bin, it sounded like a mortar impact, which obviously puts everybody in fits of laughter when people were diving for cover under tables and things.
But the lads knew that the odds they faced were no laughing matter. Outside the compound was 1,000-strong militia, determined to wipe them off the face of the earth. The top brass back in Abu Naji asked the lads if they wanted to leave.
Every 24 hours, the commanding officer would come up to me on the radio and specifically ask me if I wished to carry out our emergency evacuation plan. The soldiers would not have been prepared to go until they knew there was nothing more that they could do. They didn't want to leave Alamara to the Mahdi army.
The lads made a stand, but with more attacks every day, how long could they last? The snipers were key from the start of the siege. Able to take shots from rooftop sangers at targets in the city itself, they were the first line of defence against the mobile mortar team.
Yeah, Sanger 2, reference that doorway. He keeps popping his head out and having a look. He's definitely armed. Over. What range you got?
That's 850. So
50, is it?
yeah, it's on a card.